Right, welcome back. Our top discussion point of focus are the statements which have been made by a woman High Court judge. Now, why should only women sacrifice their career to take care of the house? This is a pertinent question raised by Justice B.V. Nagarathna, a Supreme Court judge who's poised to be the first woman Chief Justice. Speaking at the Justice Sunanda Bhandare Memorial Lecture, Justice has now called for gender parity, especially in pay, saying that economic independence is a deterrent against exploitation of women. She also specifically asks about the private sector and the aviation industry, which has discriminatory hiring policies as well. Listen in, first of all, to her strong pitch for gender parity. Okay, so first we will go to my colleague and then we will listen really to what Justice Nagarathna had to say. Going, of course, to our colleague who will shed more light really on the same and take us through the details exactly of what Justice Nagarathna had to say. So Rame is joining us live on the broadcast. Rame, take us through, some of the strong statements which have been made by Justice Nagarathna. Of course, it's a strong pitch for gender parity.
Of course, Meenakshi, Justice B.V. Nagarathna, the Supreme Court judge. The important fact to be noted here is Justice B.V. Nagarathna is said to be the first Indian woman Chief Justice the Supreme Court will ever get in 2027, the first woman Chief Justice. So these statements coming by Justice B.V. Nagarathna in a memorial lecture of Justice Sunanda Bhandare, she had made some strong statements. She stated that why is it always a woman who has to sacrifice her career? Why it cannot be some other member of the family who can sacrifice or vice versa? Why that can't happen? Why is it always a woman on the line? She made that statement. She even referred to some Supreme Court judgments which she stated is very sad. That one, she referred to a Nargesh case, Air India Airlines case, where she made us remind that the air hostesses were asked not to marry during their initial years when they were being employed. And even if they used to hire any married women, they used to ask them not to have a child for next 3-4 years. She also made one more statement that the private sectors, big MNCs, before employing women, they asked them indirectly about their menstrual cycle. That is to avoid employing a pregnant woman so that as soon as she joins, she wouldn't ask for a maternity leave. She's referred to a report and stated that it would take another 123 years for gender parity in terms of equal pay. It would take 123 years for men and women to get on the same foot to earn same. So she made some big remarks, big statements, and her topic was the role of Indian judiciary in the empowerment of Indian women. So she stated that, but as we can see the change, as 2027 will be witnessing the first woman Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So yes, Justice B.V. Nagarathna, the Supreme Court judge statements do hold a key role here.
Right, and it's a rather compelling address. She's taken on the issue of gender parity heads on and has taken a very strong stand really on the same. Stay with us and we listen in really first of all to what Justice Nagarathna had to say.
There is no gainsaying that fact that most enduring protection against economic exploitation within households is the financial independence of women. I often say that women can get into formal workforce but are often hindered from getting up in the profession, just as in the legal profession, due to lack of sharing of household duties and responsibilities and bringing up of children and in performance of domestic chores. In 2023, the Global Gender Gap Report pegged the gender gap score at 68.4%, and it said that it would take 131 years to equalize earnings between men and women at the current rate of progress. Though we have the Equal Remuneration Act, unfortunately the Supreme Court in the late 70s and early 80s in Nargesh Mirza and Air India Cabin Crew Association versus Yashashwini Merchant tried to say that in the interest of family planning, a woman air hostess must not get married within the first 4 years of her marriage and must not get children within the first 3 or 4 years of her marriage, and there were many other kind of restrictions which were actually upheld by the Supreme Court. In my humble view, those judgments would call for a course correction. Especially women in the unorganized sector or the private sector, once they join the organization, then the question is, a question is asked in certain organization as to when was their last period, because they want to know whether they are pregnant or not. In case they are pregnant, they know that they are bound to go because of maternity leave. In such a case, why should we appoint such a woman? The second thing is, if a woman asks in the private sector for maternity leave, then when she returns, her job is already taken by somebody else. So when she has a child, it means she loses her job. That cannot be the situation.
Well, absolutely. So those are very strong statements, a compelling address from the side of Justice Nagarathna. She's really sparked the gender parity debate. What do you think of it? We've opened our call-in lines as well. We also have Shilpi Jain, Supreme Court lawyer, with us. Meanwhile, we have our first caller already patched with us on the phone line. Yes, Radhika, over to you. What do you have to say about, this statement by Justice Nagarathna?
See, I beg to differ here because man and women were created different. We are nurturers of children. So why should children suffer? It is not about man or women. When you bring a child into this world, you should take responsibility for it. So I'm not against, but if women decide they don't want children or anything, then they can go ahead and compete, because the competitiveness will bring home another problem of its own. I'm sorry that you may sound that I'm chauvinist or whatever, but no, in the long run, it is always better if there's adjustment. Thank you.
Fine, fair enough, Radhika. You're entitled to your views. Shilpi Jain, Supreme Court lawyer, also with us. Shilpi, if I could come to you. End of the day, what Justice Nagarathna was talking about, she was hinting at pay parity, the need really for rectifying the biases, the gender biases which exist not only in our professional but also in our personal space. How relevant do you think these comments are in today's time and context?
They're extremely relevant. Every sentence that she said, I think I completely endorse, and likewise most of the women will endorse. We go through it day in and day out in our professional careers and in the societal pressures that each woman faces. 50% of the population in India consists of women. Hence, a proper representation in power's seats, of women is the only answer if you really want a developed country, and the progress should be at par with what it is in the Western countries. But the fact is that as far as progressive is concerned, in case of women, it remains only a facile word. We talk of dignity of women, we talk of women's empowerment, but in practical terms, men put attitude.
Right. There's a need for the change in perception. That's a very pertinent point which you are making. Why don't you hold on to that thought? Because a very similar line was echoed by women's rights activists who we spoke to. They also spoke on India's gender gap, why it's so massive, what needs to be done. Let's listen into those reactions as well.
We need to be keeping in mind all the points that she spoke about. Today, we've reached the other side of the moon, and yet patriarchy, chauvinism, misogyny, sexism continues. Marital rape is still not accepted, even in the legal fraternity, as a crime. Also, the politicians don't want to look at it. There's a lot of legal sanctions that have been given to marital rape, and that needs to change, because the Indian Constitution is clear that women have equal guarantees, equal rights as every citizen.
All right, a very pertinent statement made by Justice Nagarathna. Of course, it sparked the gender parity debate. Why should women be subordinate? Why should women take a back seat, even when, of course, it comes to a marriage, be it a personal or private space or professional space? The need for gender parity is what she's highlighted on. That's, and what needs to be done about it, that's the open-ended question which we leave our viewers with. Thank you.